My name is Isolde, and at 58, I thought my life's great love story had already been written, lived, and tragically concluded. For 20 years, I have been the widow of Lachlan, the man who taught me how to breathe and then was stolen by the sea. My world has been a quiet museum of his memory, each day a gentle preservation of the past. Then, 2 weeks ago, a moving truck pulled up to the long-abandoned cottage next door. A man got out, and the world I had so carefully preserved shattered into a million pieces. He had Lachlan's walk, his shoulders, the exact way he ran a hand through his hair when deep in thought. My new neighbor looks exactly like my husband who died 20 years ago. If you've ever felt a ghost from your past walk back into your life, drop a comment letting me know where you are watching from. Before I unravel this impossible mystery, hit like and subscribe for more real-life stories that explore the secrets that lie just beneath the surface of our lives. Before he arrived, my life was ordered and predictable, a fortress built against the chaos of grief. I am a restorer of old things, books, furniture, antique maps. My workshop, a converted barn behind my coastal Maine home, smells of sawdust, old paper, and lemon oil. I find solace in mending what is broken, in bringing back the beauty to things others have discarded. It is a quiet life, a solitary one, but it is a life I have carefully controlled since the day the Coast Guard called off the search. Lachlan was a naval architect, a man who loved the ocean as much as he loved me. He was brilliant, adventurous, and possessed a laugh that could calm any storm. Our love was the stuff of local legend, the bookish restorer and the handsome architect who built their dream home on a cliff overlooking the sea. 20 years ago, he took his sailboat, the Wanderer, out for a solo trip, a quick overnight journey to test a new rigging design. A sudden, violent squall blew in, a freak storm that wasn't on any forecast. They found pieces of the boat washed ashore 3 towns down the coast. They never found him. After a month of frantic, hopeful searching, he was declared lost at sea, presumed dead. The official process took months, but because the shipwreck was irrefutable and the Coast Guard had concluded there was no chance of survival, a death certificate was issued. I inherited our beautiful house and a life insurance policy that allowed me to continue my restoration work without financial worry. Lachlan's company, a thriving firm he had built with his stepbrother Cormac, passed entirely into his hands, as per their business agreement. Cormac, a man who shared our blood but none of Lachlan's warmth, expressed his condolences with the sterile efficiency of a corporate memo and proceeded to run the business with a ruthless focus on profit that Lachlan had always resisted. Over the years, the sharp edges of my grief softened into a dull, constant ache. I built my life around his absence. His study remains untouched, his favorite book still on the nightstand, a half-finished cup of tea long since evaporated. I have friends like Bryn, the daughter of my oldest college friend who checks on me and tries to coax me out into the world. At 30, she is a vibrant, pragmatic force of nature who sees me as a beloved aunt to be cared for, but also as a woman trapped in the amber of her past. She worries. I reassure her that I am content, and for the most part, it has been true. Until him. The cottage next door had been empty for years, a charming but neglected property. When I saw the sold sign go up, I felt a mild curiosity. When the moving truck arrived, I watched from my kitchen window as a man, his back to me, directed the movers. It was the way he stood, one hand on his hip, the other gesturing with the fluid economy of motion, that first sent a jolt through my system. It was Lachlan's dance. I dismissed it as a trick of the light, a projection of my lonely heart. But then he turned, and the breath left my body in a painful rush. It was his face. Older, of course, lined by 20 years of sun and life I couldn't account for. His dark hair now streaked with silver at the temples. But it was him. The same strong jaw, the same deep-set eyes, the same slight quirk of his mouth. I dropped the watering can I was holding, the plastic clattering against the stone patio, and stumbled back inside, my heart hammering against my ribs as if trying to escape. For 3 days, I lived in a state of suspended disbelief, a ghost in my own home. I watched him from behind my curtains, cataloging every similarity, every gesture that screamed Lachlan. He took his coffee on the porch every morning, just as Lachlan had, cradling the mug in both hands. He had the same long-legged, purposeful stride as he walked the perimeter of his new property. I saw him through my binoculars one afternoon, struggling to fix a loose shutter, and he let out a short, sharp curse of frustration, the exact same word Lachlan always used. Bren found me like this, sitting in my darkened living room, the binoculars still in my lap. "Isolde, are you okay? I've called you 5 times," she said, her voice laced with concern as she flicked on a lamp. "He's here," I whispered, my voice hoarse. "Who's here?" "Lachlan. He's living next door." Bran's face softened with pity. She sat beside me on the sofa, taking my hand in hers. Her touch was warm and real. "Oh, sweetie, I know you still miss him, but sometimes when we miss someone enough, we start to see them everywhere. It's just a man who looks a little like him." "No," I insisted, pulling my hand away. "It's not a little like him. It's exactly like him. His face, his walk, his habits. It's him, Bryn." "Okay," she said, her tone gentle, the kind one uses with a person who is unwell. "What's his name? Have you spoken to him?" "I don't know. I can't. What if I'm wrong? What if I'm crazy?" "You're not crazy," she said firmly. "You're grieving, and maybe you're a little lonely. Let's go out. Let's get some dinner. Take your mind off of it." I refused. I couldn't leave. I couldn't risk missing something. The confrontation, the moment of truth came the next day. I was in my front garden, pulling weeds with a ferocity that was more about anxiety than horticulture, when I heard his voice. "That's a beautiful garden you have there." I froze, my back to him, the trowel falling from my gloved hand. The voice. It was Lachlan's voice, the same timbre, the same gentle resonance. It was older, perhaps, a little rougher around the edges, but it was him. I turned slowly, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs. He was standing at the low stone wall that separated our properties, a friendly smile on his face. Up close, the resemblance was even terrifyingly perfect. "I'm Elias Vance," he said, extending a hand over the wall. "I just moved in." I stared at his hand, then up at his face. The name meant nothing to me. My mind was a whirlwind of impossible theories. Amnesia? A secret twin? A cruel doppelganger? Sent to torment me? I took his hand, my fingers trembling. His grip was firm and warm, achingly familiar. "Isolde," I managed to say. "Isolde Croft." "A pleasure to meet you, Isolde," he said, his smile widening, and then he laughed, A soft, easy sound in response to my cat, Jasper, who had appeared and was now rubbing against his legs. It was Lachlan's laugh. The sound I had replayed in my memory 1,000 times. The sound I thought I would never hear again. I felt my knees go weak. "Are you all right?" he asked, his smile fading into a look of concern. "You've gone quite pale." "I'm fine," I lied, steadying myself against the wall. "Just surprised to have a new neighbor after so long. Welcome to the neighborhood." I retreated back into my house on shaky legs, my mind a storm of confusion and impossible hope. Bryn was wrong. This wasn't just a resemblance. This was something else. I had to know the truth, but I didn't know where to begin. The first step was to find out everything I could about Elias Vance. My investigation began online, a late-night descent into the rabbit hole of public records and social media. The name Elias Vance yielded frustratingly little. There were a few men with that name scattered across the country, none of whom matched his age or description. There was no social media presence, no digital footprint to speak of. It was as if he had only begun to exist recently. This lack of a past was in itself a clue. It felt less like a life lived and more like a life constructed. My attempts at casual, neighborly reconnaissance were equally fraught with a mixture of terror and hope. I accidentally retrieved my mail at the same time he did. "Lovely day," I'd say, my heart pounding. "Indeed," he would reply, his voice sending a shiver of recognition down my spine. He had a habit of adding a dash of cinnamon to his coffee. I could smell it wafting from his porch in the mornings, the exact same peculiar habit Lachlan had. One afternoon, I saw him through the window sketching in a notepad. Lachlan had been a talented artist, his architectural drawings full of life and movement. I felt a desperate urge to see what Elias was drawing, to see if the style matched. Bryn grew increasingly worried. She found me one evening, a stack of books on grief and loss on her lap. "We need to talk about this," she said gently. I looked him up, too. There's a record of Elias Vance being issued a new Social Security number 10 years ago. It's a protocol for people in witness protection or for amnesia victims who can't be identified. "Amnesia," I whispered, the word hanging in the air. It was a crazy movie of the week theory, but it was the only one that fit. "Or he's just a private person, Isolde. The point is, you're becoming obsessed. This isn't healthy. You need to let go of Lachlan." "I can't let go if he's living right next door," I cried, the frustration and confusion of the past few weeks finally boiling over. The real escalation came from Cormac. He had never once visited my home in the 20 years since Lachlan's death, our interactions limited to brief and cold exchanges at the grocery store. So when his sleek black Mercedes pulled into my driveway one afternoon, I knew it was about Elias. He didn't bother with pleasantries. "I heard you have a new neighbor," he said, his eyes scanning the cottage next door with a look of cold assessment. "What's it to you, Cormac?" "People are talking, Isolde, saying he looks like Lachlan. I just came to warn you, don't go chasing ghosts. It's a dangerous game. Grief can make people see things that aren't there." His words were almost identical to Bryn's, but where hers were filled with concern, his were laced with a clear, unmistakable threat. He wasn't worried about my mental health. He was worried about what I might discover. "What are you so afraid of?" I asked, my voice steady. "I'm afraid of you making a fool of yourself and embarrassing the family name," he said, but his eyes betrayed a deeper anxiety. "Lachlan is gone. Let him rest in peace. His visit solidified my conviction. Cormac was hiding something. He knew more about that day 20 years ago than he had ever let on. This wasn't just about a man who looked like my dead husband anymore. This was about a secret Cormac was desperate to keep buried.
I knew I needed more than just a feeling. I needed proof. I racked my brain for some irrefutable piece of evidence, some physical marker that only I would know. And then it came to me. The scar. When Lachlan was 12, he had fallen out of a tree, and a broken branch had left a jagged silver scar on the inside of his left wrist, shaped almost like a lightning bolt. He had always been self-conscious about it, often wearing watches with wide bands to cover it. If I could see Elias Vance's left wrist, I would know for sure. The next few days were a comical and frustrating exercise in trying to glimpse a man's wrist. I invited him over for a cup of tea, hoping he'd roll up his sleeves. He wore a long-sleeve sweater. I accidentally dropped a bag of groceries as he was walking by, hoping he'd offer a hand to help me pick them up. He did, but he wore a leather-strapped watch that covered the exact spot I needed to see. My obsession was growing, and I was running out of ideas. I was about to give up when I remembered Lachlan's secret. Lachlan had always been a man of secrets, but not the malicious kind. He loved puzzles, codes, and hidden things. Shortly after we moved into our house, he'd shown me a loose floorboard in his study, hidden beneath an old Persian rug. "This is my dead man's switch," he had said with a grin. "When I ever disappear on some grand adventure, everything you need to know will be right here." At the time, I had laughed it off as another one of his romantic, dramatic gestures. I hadn't thought of it in 20 years. My hands trembled as I rolled back the heavy rug. The floorboards looked solid, uniform. I pressed on each one, my heart sinking with every fruitless push. Had I imagined it? Was it just another memory, distorted by grief? Then my fingers found it. A slight give, a barely perceptible seam. I pried it open with a letter opener, the wood groaning in protest. Beneath it lay a small, dust-covered recess. Inside was a single object, a slim, leather-bound journal. I sat on the floor of his silent study, the scent of old paper and leather filling the air, and I began to read. The journal was not a diary of his feelings, but a meticulous record of his work, his designs, and his growing suspicions. The last entries, dated in the weeks leading up to his final voyage, made my blood run cold. He wrote about Cormac. He had discovered discrepancies in the company's accounts, small at first, then larger and more blatant. He had found evidence of shell corporations, of funds being diverted to offshore accounts, of contracts being awarded to companies he secretly owned. Lachlan had been uncovering a massive embezzlement scheme. He wrote in his precise, architectural script, "Cormac has been stealing from our company for years. He has been bleeding it dry from the inside. I have all the proof I need. I plan to confront him on Friday, the day after I get back from my trip. I have a feeling he won't take it well. I've put a second set of the real account books, along with all my evidence, in a safe deposit box at Sterling National Bank. The key and the account number are hidden in the spine of my first edition Moby Dick." The final entry was dated the morning he left. "The sea feels different today, restless, Or maybe it's just me. I told Cormac I was taking the boat out. The look in his eyes was strange, almost like relief. I'm probably just being paranoid. See you Saturday, Izzy. He had called me Izzy. No one else ever had. I sat there frozen, the journal clutched in my hand. This was no accident. The storm, the shipwreck, it was all too convenient. Cormac hadn't just inherited a company, he had been saved from exposure and ruin. He hadn't just lost a stepbrother, he had gotten rid of his only accuser. I ran to the bookshelf, my hands shaking as I pulled down the heavy, leather-bound copy of Moby Dick. I slit open the spine with a restoration knife, and there they were. A small, strange-looking key and a slip of paper with a 10-digit number.
I had the proof of Cormac's motive, but I still didn't have proof that Elias was Lachlan. The journal changed everything, but it also raised the stakes. If Elias was Lachlan, suffering from amnesia, then his life could be in danger if Cormac ever found out he was alive. I had to proceed with extreme caution. I couldn't just run next door and demand to see his wrist. I needed a plan. I called Bryn, my voice urgent. "You need to come over, now. And you need to believe me." When she arrived, I didn't give her a chance to argue or reason with me. I simply handed her the journal. She sat on the sofa where she had tried to comfort me just a week before and read in silence. I've watched her face shift from skepticism to shock to a grim, steely resolve. When she finished, she looked up at me, her eyes clear and focused. "Okay," she said. "What do we do first?" The validation, the simple act of being believed felt like a dam breaking inside me. Tears of relief streamed down my face. "First, we need to see his wrist," I said. "Then we go to the bank, and then we destroy Cormac." Bryn, with her pragmatic mind, immediately devised a better plan than my clumsy attempts at espionage. "We can't force it. It has to happen naturally. We need a social situation," she said, pacing my living room. "The town's annual Founders' Day picnic is next weekend. Everyone goes. We'll make sure he's invited. We'll stage a chance encounter." The plan was simple yet brilliant. The local homeowners association, of which I was a passive member, was organizing the event. Bryn, a force of nature when given a task, called the association president and volunteered us both to run the main barbecue grill. He's new to town. Someone will surely invite him. And what do people do at a barbecue? They roll up their sleeves, she said with a triumphant smile. The week leading up to the picnic was a torment of anxiety. Every time I saw Elias in his yard, I felt a desperate urge to run to him, to tell him everything. But I held back, knowing that a premature move could put him in danger. We also made an appointment with Lachlan's old lawyer, Mr. Abernathy, a man in his 80s who had retired years ago but still held a sharp legal mind. We met him in the quiet coffee shop, the scent of old books still clinging to his tweed jacket. We showed him a copy of the journal entry. His face grew grim as he read. "I never trusted Cormac," he said, his voice a low rumble. "Lachlan was the heart of that company. Cormac was always just the calculating mind. If what this journal says is true, we have a case for fraud, embezzlement, and possibly even attempted murder." He agreed to help us gain access to the safe deposit box, explaining the legal hurdles we would need to overcome. "But first things first," he said, his sharp eyes meeting mine. "Are you sure this man is your husband?" "I will be, after Saturday," I replied. The day of the picnic was bright and unseasonably warm. The town green was filled with families, checkered blankets, and the smell of hot dogs and fresh-cut grass. Bryn and I stood behind a large grill, armed with tongs and a mountain of burger patties, our aprons already smudged with grease. I scanned the crowd, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. And then I saw him. He was talking to the town librarian, a friendly woman who made it her business to welcome every newcomer. He was laughing, and the sound carried across the green, a sound so familiar it made my knees weak. As if pulled by an invisible string, he and the librarian eventually made their way towards the food line. Isolde, the librarian called out, I'd like you to meet your new neighbor properly. Elias, this is Isolde Croft.
We've met, Elias said with that same warm, devastating smile. He was wearing a light blue long-sleeved shirt. I felt a pang of disappointment. But then, as he reached for a plate, he pushed up his sleeves to avoid the heat of the grill, and there it was. On the inside of his left wrist, stark against his tan skin, was a jagged silver scar shaped exactly like a lightning bolt. The tongs fell from my hand, clattering against the grill. The world seemed to fade to a dull roar, all the sounds of the picnic blurring into a single meaningless hum. All the only thing I could see was that scar. It was him. It was real. Isolde? Bren's voice cut through the fog. She had seen it too. Her hand gripped my arm, steadying me. I looked up at Elias, whose smile had been replaced by a look of deep, furrowed concern. Are you okay? He asked. The same question he'd asked in my garden. I took a breath, the air feeling thin and sharp in my lungs. I need to talk to you, I said, my voice barely a whisper. Privately. He looked confused, but nodded. We walked away from the bustle of the picnic to a quiet spot beneath an old oak tree. I didn't know where to start. How do you tell a man that his entire life is a lie? Your name isn't Elias Vance, I began, my voice shaking. He frowned. I'm sorry? Your name is Lachlan Croft. You are a naval architect, and you are my husband. The look on his face was not of recognition. It was of genuine, profound confusion and a little bit of fear. Ma'am, I think you're mistaken. My name is Elias. I I was in an accident a long time ago. A boating accident, I think. I don't remember anything before that. I was told my family couldn't be located. His words confirmed my wildest theory. He had survived. He had washed ashore somewhere, his memory wiped clean by the trauma, and Cormac, who must have seen the news reports about an unidentified man with amnesia, had done nothing. He had let his brother disappear into a new life so he could steal his old one. I can prove it, I said, my voice gaining strength. I gently took his left hand and turned it over, tracing the scar with my finger. You got this when you were 12, falling out of the oak tree in your parents' backyard. You were trying to rescue a kite. He stared at the scar, then back at my face, his eyes filled with a storm of emotions. There was no flash of memory, no sudden recognition. There was only the bewildered, frightened look of a man whose entire identity had just been called into question. The conversation under the oak tree was the hardest of my life. I told him everything, my voice low and urgent, showing him pictures of us on my phone, pictures of the house he had designed, of the boat he had built. He listened in stunned silence, his face a mask of conflict. He didn't remember me. He didn't remember our life. But the scar, the details I knew, they were undeniable cracks in the foundation of the life he had been told was his. My name, the name Elias Vance, the hospital gave it to me, he said, his voice sounding distant. They said I was found on a beach, miles from any wreckage, no identification. The trauma was significant. They called it dissociative amnesia. I spent years in rehabilitation learning how to be a person again. I was told I was a ghost, a man with no past.
A man whose stepbrother had deliberately let him stay a ghost. My anger at Cormac burned hotter than ever. I don't expect you to believe me right now, I said gently. It's too much, but I have proof, and I need your help to get it. I explained about the journal, the safe deposit box, and Cormac's betrayal. Whether he was Lachlan or Elias, he was a victim of a terrible crime. Something in his eyes, a flicker of the old decisive Lachlan, ignited.
If what you're saying is true, then a man stole my life. I need to know. He agreed to help. The next step was the bank. With Mr. Abernathy's legal guidance, we were able to petition the court. Presenting the journal and Lachlan's original signature cards from the bank, a judge granted us a one-time order to open the box. The three of us, me, Elias, and Mr. Abernathy, met at Sterling National Bank the following Tuesday. The bank vault was cold and silent. A stern-faced manager used 2 keys to open the heavy steel door. Inside, surrounded by the secrets of 100 other lives, I felt the weight of the past 20 years. The manager retrieved the box, placing it on a small table in a private viewing room. My hands trembled as I took the key Lachlan had hidden in the book and inserted it into the lock. It turned with a satisfying click. Inside, beneath a layer of dust, was a stack of ledgers and a thick sealed manila envelope. The ledgers were exactly what Lachlan had described, a meticulous, damning record of Cormac's years of embezzlement, detailing every fraudulent transaction, every shell company, every stolen dollar. But it was the envelope that took my breath away. On the front, in Lachlan's handwriting, it said, "For Isolde, in case I don't make it back." I opened it. Inside was a formal, notarized copy of his will, leaving everything to me. There was also a handwritten letter. "My dearest Izzy, if you are reading this, then my paranoia was justified. I am so sorry. I should have told you about Cormac sooner, but I wanted to protect you from the ugliness of it. He is not just a thief. There is a coldness in him that frightens me. The evidence in this box is everything. Take it to Abernathy. Don't let him get away with it. Live a beautiful life, my love. Sail, read, build things. Don't let my memory become a cage for you. All my love, forever, Lachlan." Tears streamed down my face as Elias read the letter over my shoulder. "He loved you very much," he said softly, though there was no recognition in his voice. He was reading about a stranger. "This is the proof we need," Mr. Abernathy said, his voice grim. "We have the motive, the method, and the confession in his own hand. Now we go to the authorities. But first, I think it's time for a visit to Mr. Cormac Croft." The final confrontation took place in the office that should have been Lachlan's. The headquarters of Croft Naval Architecture was a sleek, modern building, a testament to the fortune Cormac had stolen. We were announced as representatives from Mr. Abernathy's firm. Cormac greeted us in his expansive corner office, a look of smug confidence on his face that quickly vanished when he saw me and Elias standing beside the old lawyer. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded, his eyes darting nervously between Elias and me. "We've come to discuss some old business, Cormac," Mr. Abernathy said, placing the ledgers from the safe deposit box on Cormac's polished mahogany desk. "We have Lachlan's journal, we have his real account books, and we have him," the lawyer said, gesturing to Elias. Cormac stared at Elias, his face turning a sickly shade of gray. He looked like he had seen a ghost, which in a way he had. That's not possible. He's dead. Am I? Elias spoke for the first time, his voice a low, dangerous rumble that sounded more like Lachlan than ever before. Cormac stumbled backward, collapsing into his chair. The boat, the storm, you couldn't have survived. So you admit it, Mr. Abernethy pressed. You knew he was in danger. I didn't kill him, Cormac shrieked, his composure completely gone. I just made sure the radio wasn't working, and I may have loosened a fuel line. I just wanted to delay him, to give myself time to cover my tracks. The storm was just bad luck. I never wanted him to die. His confession, blurted out in panic, hung in the air.
And when you saw the news reports, I asked, my voice cold as ice. The ones about the unidentified amnesiac found on the coast? The man who matched his description perfectly? You just let him stay lost? You let me believe he was dead for 20 years. His silence was the most damning confession of all. At that moment, 2 uniformed police officers, whom Mr. Abernathy had arranged to have waiting outside, entered the office. Cormac Croft, you're under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, and reckless endangerment leading to injury, one of the officers said, as he snapped handcuffs onto Cormac's wrists. As they led him away, a weeping, broken man, I looked at Elias. He was watching the scene with a strange, detached expression. A man witnessing the destruction of a life he couldn't remember ever having. The truth was finally out. But for us, the real journey was just beginning. The fallout from Cormac's arrest was a media sensation. Lost architect returns after 20 years, the headline screamed. Stepbrother's deception uncovered. The story was a tangled web of greed, betrayal, and a love story that had seemingly come back from the dead. For weeks, our quiet coastal town was besieged by reporters. We retreated behind the stone walls of my property, the 2 of us becoming reluctant recluses. Legally, things moved quickly. Cormac, facing overwhelming evidence, pleaded guilty to a slew of financial crimes and was sentenced to a lengthy prison term. The company, which had been built on the foundation of Lachlan's talent and Cormac's deceit, was now legally mine, as per the will in the safe deposit box. The weight of it felt like a burden, not a victory. It was a business tainted by betrayal, and I wanted nothing to do with it. With the help of Mr. Abernathy, I sold the firm, lock, stock, and barrel. The man who was my husband began the slow, arduous process of trying to reconnect with a past he didn't remember. He chose to keep the name Elias for now. Lachlan Croft is a stranger to me, he explained, a deep sadness in his eyes. He is a man in photographs, in your stories. I need to figure out who I am first. He started therapy with a specialist in dissociative amnesia. The doctors were cautiously optimistic. Sometimes, they said, memories could be triggered. Other times, the brain keeps them locked away forever. We didn't try to force it. We started over, 2 strangers with a shared, one-sided history. We took long walks on the beach where he had once taught me the names of the constellations. He didn't remember them, but he listened with a quiet intensity as I pointed them out. I showed him his workshop, the tools still neatly arranged, the half-finished model of a schooner still on its stand. He picked up a carving tool, his hand fitting around it with an ease that seemed instinctual, but his eyes held no recognition. It was both heartbreaking and strangely beautiful. The pressure to live up to the memory of the perfect, idealized Lachlan was gone. In his place was Elias, a man who was quiet, thoughtful,
and carried a deep, unspoken sorrow. I found myself falling in love not with the memory of my husband, but with the reality of this new man. Our relationship was tentative, fragile. We were not husband and wife. We were two survivors, learning to navigate a new, uncharted sea. Bryn was our bridge to the world. She fended off reporters, managed our appointments, and brought over groceries and gossip, a welcome dose of normalcy in our surreal existence. "How are you two doing? Really?" she asked one evening as we all sat on my porch watching the sunset. "We're figuring it out," I said, looking at Elias, who gave a small, hesitant smile. "It's like reading a book about a fascinating character and then realizing that character is supposed to be you," he said.
I don't feel like him, but I want to know him. The money from the sale of the company sat in a trust, untouched. It felt like blood money, the product of Cormac's crime and my 2 decades of grief. I didn't know what to do with it. Then one day, Elias came into my workshop while I was restoring an old, water-damaged book. "You bring things back to life," he said, watching my careful hands. "That's what we should do with the money." The idea, once spoken, felt so obviously right. We established the Lachlan Croft Foundation for Maritime Search and Rescue, a nonprofit dedicated to funding new technologies and volunteer organizations that help find those lost at sea. We also created a support network for families of amnesia victims, a resource Elias wished he'd had. Pouring our energy and the tainted money into something good felt like a cleansing, a way to create a positive legacy from the wreckage of our past. Months turned into a year. Elias's memory never fully returned, but there were flashes, small, dislodged moments that would surface without warning. One day he smelled cinnamon and said, "My mother used to put this in my cocoa." Another time he heard a particular piece of classical music on the radio and hummed along perfectly, though he couldn't name the composer. Each small piece was a gift, a glimpse of the man he had been. We never remarried. It didn't feel necessary. We were simply Isolde and Elias, partners in a life that was quieter and more complicated than the one I had shared with Lachlan, but just as profound. I had gotten my husband back, but not in the way I had ever imagined. I hadn't resurrected the past. I had been given the chance to build a new future. One evening we were sitting in his study, the room that had once been Lachlan's shrine. Elias was sketching in a notepad, something he had started doing with an almost compulsive need. "What are you drawing?" I asked, leaning over his shoulder. It was a boat, a sleek, beautiful sailboat, its lines both elegant and powerful. At the bottom he had written its name, The Return. I think I'm starting to remember how," he said, a slow, wondrous smile spreading across his face. And as I looked at the drawing, at the familiar, confident lines that could have only been drawn by my husband's hand, I knew that while Lachlan might be lost to the sea of amnesia, his soul had finally found its way home. Have you ever had to start over in life after a great loss or a shocking revelation? What did you learn about the resilience of the human heart? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to our channel for more real-life experiences that remind us that it's never too late for a new beginning. Thank you for listening. And remember that sometimes the greatest love stories are the ones that get a second chapter.